Hey guys, what's up? You're listening to Lips LA Radio. I'm Scott Lips, and
I'm Jessica Michel.
And we're here with Brandon Boyd. Really excited. Good dude. What's up, Brandon?
Hi. Whoa, how did I get here?
I think
this is crazy.
You came with Brucey, which is awesome. So for all you guys who don't know, Brandon Boyd is the singer of Incubus, a great band, a good friend, and all-around amazing guy. He's a songwriter. He's a musician. He's an author. He's an artist. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, there's almost like nothing that almost nothing you don't do, Brandon, right?
Apparently, I've been busy.
there's very few things you don't do, right? Because there's so much in your repertoire at this point. So
thank you for noticing, but I'm working on that part. There are quite a lot of things that I don't do that I'm trying to sort of crack the code on. Shall we talk about it?
We should, but one thing I will say, everything you do, because I know you pretty well at this point, you do really well. So,
thank you.
You know, sometimes you have musicians that do art, and the art isn't that great. Your art is great.
Thank
you.
And
I've been to your art show where I actually spotted Brad Pitt at your art show. We'll get into all that.
Oh, we will. Okay,
but
good.
The only time I've ever seen Brad Pitt in my life, and he was at your art show.
Same.
But yeah, there's so much to talk about. So, guys, thanks for tuning in. We're at the Dream Hotel. You're listening to Lips LA Radio, Brandon Boyd and Jessica Michel.
This is Lips LA on Dash Radio.
I took a really great quote that I saw that you said a long time ago, and I thought it was an amazing quote. Knowing your band, I just went to Cabo this weekend, which was amazing. I saw you guys play, and just a great concert. You guys play hits, which is great. Sometimes, like people, you see bands play. And Jess, sometimes you go to see an artist you really want to see and they don't play the hits.
Yes.
These guys deliver. And that's always like an issue I have when you see bands like I see Radiohead now and they play no songs I know.
They're being stingy. It's like they just want to feed you what they want to feed you, their new music. Mm-hmm. But what we come for a lot of times is like that nostalgia of what we grew up on.
Mm-hmm. I understand both sides of this situation because I agree. Like I've gone to see tons of bands and you definitely want to hear what's new for them and you want to hear where they're going, but you also want to hear where they come from and what initially kind of intoxicated you about them. And so many bands that I love and admire they keep that from you, or they make you wait until like the encore, right. And they play like a medley of those songs you wanted to hear. And I get it because at a certain point you've played those songs so many times that you'd rather ingest grenades than play them again. That being said, what our band has kind of come to do over the years is give ourselves permission to reinvent the songs that were really popular in their day.
Definitely.
And so they become interesting to us again, which is important.
And when I saw you guys play there today, I have to say, Cabo was a great festival. I love that festival because you have vintage, right? You have like these bands, like you have like Blondie playing there, who I haven't seen play in I don't know how many years. And then you have hip hop, and then you have rock, and then you have hard rock, and then you have alternative rock. It's this amazing sort of medley of all these incredible styles. And I actually think it has one of the best lineups of any festival. I remember telling you like 6 months ago, I'm going to go to that festival. And it was Robert Plant, who I didn't get to see, and it was you guys, and it was so many bands. Who else played there? It was like Foo Fighters the night I went, which was great.
Yeah, they were awesome.
It was a great lineup. But
they give you the hits, the Foo Fighters.
It's all hits. But let's go back to the beginning, because Incubus, I think, was very, very unique when you guys started in that you used a DJ initially, which I really hadn't seen a lot of bands early on do that. I think it was like you guys and Linkin Park and bands that didn't sort of survive the test of time as much, like Limp Bizkit, that used like DJs. But what made you guys initially, because I kind of want to take it back to the beginning when you guys started, and I love this quote. You said, "We have all the elements of being the worst band in the world, a bass player who's got some slap bass shit, heavy riff guitars, a DJ scratching on his songs, a crazy drummer, and a singer who's in touch with his feminine side. Even our band name is the worst name ever. It evokes imagery of Incubus in death metal riding with bullet belts across our chest." So a great quote, actually. And
I think I was 19 when I said that.
Yeah, but by the way, like it couldn't be more, like it shouldn't work as well as it does, but it really does. And you guys wrote some incredible songs and still do. And yeah, it just kind of take me and Jess back and when you guys started the band and like sort of the inspirations, because I know even live you play like African instruments and there's all this kind of stuff that you do. I know roots wise you're really diverse, and we can talk about your solo career in a little bit, but just let's start about like when the band started, right? How did you and Mikey got together? How did it all start?
We so our drummer Jose Pasillas and I we were in elementary school together, and we were hanging out because we both were obsessed with drawing and skating and surfing. And then so we met Michael, who is our guitar player, in middle school, and the three of us were were chums. We were buds, and we would just go surf and skate together. And so it was kind of a logical progression for us to start a band together. I didn't know how to write a song or even how to sing, but this I have said a handful of times. I think they wanted me to be the singer because I had long hair and I rarely wore a shirt.
Oh, and that still works to your benefit now.
noticed.
So
I got like 2 more years with that, and so I'm going to exploit it to the nth degree.
You're still not wearing a shirt on stage.
I'm not even wearing a shirt right now. It's amazing.
Actually, we're all sitting here shirtless.
Yeah, I'm just in Speedos. That's how I do radio interviews. So we were friends, and we still are friends. I think that's why it's still fun to be in a band together, is because it's a family affair.
Yeah, because I saw that. I met your drummer, and he was showing us like the constellations, right? Where he had this app that was showing us like you could see all the stars in this app. You've ever seen this app? It's really cool. I don't remember what it was called, but anyway, I could tell that you guys were still really friends, which was really cool.
Yeah.
And it's so rare that like you hear all these bands years later that they hate each other. So it was cool to see that you guys are really good friends. And I know art had something to do with when you first started. You were like designing some of the flyers and things like that.
Jose and I would we'd hand draw all the flyers, and we would go to the Xerox place, and we would Xerox like hundreds of them, and we would put them on high school campuses. We would like paper the high school campuses. And so we were like selling out clubs in Hollywood before we could even get into the clubs legally to play. Like they would let us in, but then they would escort us out after we played because we weren't allowed to be in.
You were what, 16 or how old were you then?
We started the band when we were 15.
Oh, so you were 16, yeah.
We started playing out in Hollywood by the time we were maybe 17.
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel like that's so rare nowadays. Everything is so orchestrated, like bands are put together. You rarely find where people who grew up together, they started the band from childhood or even just kind of on their own. It seems like we've moved away from that. What do you think?
I think that's true to an extent, to the extent that kind of creative paradigm doesn't exist as much anymore. That situation still happens, I'm sure, every single day all over the world, where people just naturally, creatively gravitate towards each other. But we're in a time in the sort of cultural, creative world where even the term like a band doesn't have as much sort of weight as it once did. So
and
we were growing up, it was like that's what you did. You started a band.
Yeah.
Or we didn't have the internet, which I'm dating myself now, but going back to the flyer thing, like we would collect people's physical addresses, and we would write or type their address, fold the flyer, put it in like a stamp, and put it in the mailbox. And that's how we started learning how to like sell out clubs in Hollywood. Was by
you were sending invites to who? To friends from high school, or who were you sending?
We would collect at shows. We would collect people's addresses.
Oh.
And I'll take you one step further, because I used to go to the Forum and literally take the flyers of my band and put it on cars.
That's what we did too.
Yeah, and remember we used to staple these flyers to
there'd be like a telephone pole with 1,000 band flyers. The fact that like anybody would walk up to that telephone pole and be like, I choose Incubus.
Right. And then people would put theirs over yours. You'd have to come back the next night and put yours over theirs again.
It was graffiti.
It was like this flyer war thing. But actually, before the pre-internet, that's actually how bands would promote themselves. So you go down the Sunset Strip, and I'm probably dating myself too. You'd pass out flyers. You go to the Forum. You put flyers all over cars. There was no other way to get the word out there.
Yeah.
So, or you would have tapes of your demos and you'd start sending them around.
And that stuff worked.
Yeah, and hoping that it would go like catch on like wildfire.
Guys, I'm not that young.
We're both looking at you.
Yeah, but you may not remember the flyer thing.
Let us tell you how we did it back in the day.
Right.
Let me actually just throw one more little thing in there that may or may not have worked to our benefit when we were in high school and handing out flyers. I never got any proper like quote unquote sex education from friends or family or school. And so one day, Michael, our guitar player, his mom gave him this book, The Joy of Sex. You guys heard of it?
Yeah, I think so. That was from like the 60s, right?
It was illustrated, like really graphically, but beautifully illustrated.
If I don't have it, I'll go pick it up after this.
Yeah, you should. It's wonderful. It teaches you kind of everything that you needed to know up until 1980 about sex and like the joy of it. Not necessarily like, don't do it, you'll die, your ears will rot off kind of a thing, but like this is that's backwards
organ.
doggy style, like showed you positions, but these beautifully intricate drawings. So
I don't even feel like that book could come out now. It would be like not.
it'd be boring to people.
Yeah, exactly.
So what would happen? Sorry, is this like a family show, or can I like?
No, you can
Okay,
say whatever you
awesome.
want.
Satellite
Yeah.
radio.
Yeah.
So check it out. We got this book, and that's kind of how we were learning about things as we were teenagers. But then we were like, this would be an awesome flyer. So Jose and I would draw like bubbles and mushrooms and crystals and aliens around this couple embraced in what is called the 69 position, or like reverse cowboy. And we would make it look like part of the flyer, and then we would draw Incubus in pretty letters over these things and pass them out. And so weirdly, people started coming to our concerts.
Wow.
But I actually read, and maybe incorrectly, that people started coming to shows not knowing what kind of band you were because of
Totally.
those flyers.
Totally.
Right? So
We
they
didn't
probably
care.
thought like, hey, well, am I going to some weird like sex show or
show.
something?
Right.
But actually, I'm going to see Incubus. So,
Right.
So, all right, take us from the time you started designing
It's a true
flowers.
story.
You guys couldn't get into clubs. And then what was your first hit? Was it like Pardon Me? I don't know. Actually, I'm not
So
sure.
we're jumping forward a little
A
bit.
couple
'cause
albums, right? The third album was when you had your, I feel like the breakthrough record. For
It
you
would have been
guys.
our third full-length record. It
Yeah.
was called Make Yourself. It came out in 1999. So it was the better part of 10 years that we were a band before we actually had what anyone could consider a hit, quote unquote. And it was a song called Pardon Me. It was in 1999.
I knew that.
So
Are you impressed?
You guys stayed together for 10 years, continuously like doing this band thing with a band of boys. And what was keeping you guys together? Just like the pure joy of music, or was there money involved? Like, were you guys making a profit here, or 10 years is a long time to
It is,
stay
especially
together.
considering we actually weren't making any money. We were making enough money to
live, right.
stay on the road and to pay our humble rent that we had. So we got signed in 1996, and we started our band in 91. So we were a band for over 5 years before we got a record deal. But the record deal was to like an independent imprint, and so it wasn't necessarily, there wasn't an expectation that like you need a hit right now. It's like we actually preempted the whole thing where we want to go on tour. Just put us on the road for as long as possible. And so we were on the road driving ourselves around the country in a van and trailer for a couple of years.
And sometimes that means sleeping in the van for people that don't know, right? You don't always it's not the Four Seasons. You guys are like at
It's
a motel.
about the least
sharing-
glamorous
Yeah.
experiences you could possibly imagine. You can only really ingest so many of your closest friends' flatulence before you start to lose your mind a little
Right.
bit. But I think maybe what happens is
You become a better person. Maybe.
you become a better person.
Right.
You become deeply aware of your surroundings and sharing surroundings, but you also get really clear about what your deepest intentions are. Like, why are you here? Why are you doing this? Why would you choose to do this for free in horrible conditions? Where there would be times when we were like chasing tours. We would be the first band of 3 or 4. Like we were opening it for 311 and Sugar Ray. At one point, we were in the van and trailer, and it was the dead of winter in the Midwest, and our heat broke, and so we had those like hand warmer things,
Yeah.
in full like parkas with stuff on us in the car, and shivering and sick and barely making it to the show before our actual set time. And a lot of it was out of the kindness and generosity of bands like 311 and Sugar Ray and Korn that took us out, and they like saw that we were like these shivering, struggling kids.
But they recognize something in your music, obviously, right? They recognize your
I
talent.
hope so.
Yeah, they
It
must
just felt
have.
so
'cause
bad for us. Like,
no, I think
this kid a sandwich.
No.
otherwise they wouldn't have taken you out on the road. But
I hope.
But I actually want to know the whole story behind some of your because I feel like Wish You Were Here, Drive, a lot of these songs. I actually want to know the stories behind them. So hold that thought. I actually want to play Wish You Were Here, and then I want to come back and I want you to tell us like actually the story behind Wish You Were Here, because it's such a great song. And maybe your second hit, would you say?
Wish You Were Here was actually, that was on Morning View, which came out after Make Yourself. And there were a couple years in between. And Wish You Were Here would have been our fourth.
Oh, okay. So Drive was before that. Okay. So we'll get into the story behind Drive, Pardon Me, and Wish You Were Here. But right now we're going to play Wish You Were Here, and we'll be back with Brandon Boyd from Incubus in just a few minutes. Stay tuned. You're listening to Lips LA Radio with Brandon Boyd and Jessica Michel. Hey guys, we're back. Lips LA Radio with Brandon Boyd, Incubus here. And actually we got a caller, so we figured we'd jump right to the caller, and then we can get into some of the stories behind some of the best Incubus songs. So Maria, you're on the air here. You're live with Brandon. Are you there?
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Yes, I'm here. I'm calling from Madrid. How you doing, Brandon?
Oh, no way. How you doing? I'm good.
Oh, that's so cool to hear you talking to me.
You have a question for Brandon, Maria?
Yeah, of course. So, Brandon, well, did you like your concert here in Madrid? Like 2 weeks ago or something.
Yeah, we were just in all over Europe, and we had some amazing shows in Spain. Yeah, we had a fantastic time there. It's
We have.
Did you have a good
we
time?
have this. Yeah, of course. It was
I'm
so
glad.
cool. Listen to you guys for 15, 16 years. I know it's 27 years for you, but like 15 or 16 years for me, and it was so cool. First time, I was freaking out.
Well, we're going to
thank
talk about
you.
the difference in audiences, Maria. So thank you for calling in, and then
Thanks, Maria.
we'll talk to you
Thank
soon. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Brandon. Love you.
Bye.
So, for a minute there, I just want to talk about. I want to touch base with a bunch of stuff. But how are audiences different in like Madrid and America, right? Because they're different all over. And the Kabu Festival, I think the crowd was super into you guys. I actually got to stand on the stage, which I thought was super. I love staying on the stage behind the drummer because your
Different
drummer
vantage point.
Your drummer also plays very uniquely. I
Yeah.
mean, his snare drum is like by his feet. It's
Yeah.
one of the strangest setups I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And I love watching that because I remember asking you like, how does he actually play? It's like so bizarre to me. But is he lefty or something on top of it? Or
No,
he just plays very
his
uniquely.
kit has evolved
Yeah.
to this interesting kind of shiny lowrider situation.
Yeah, it's like
And-
it's like a lowrider drummer is what it is. So
Yeah.
pretty cool. But so did you find that the audiences in Spain and everywhere, because I know you were all over the place,
Mm-hmm.
are they particularly like a lot different than audiences in America for you?
I have to say, yes. The answer is yes. The audiences are different depending on where you are in the world. I have noticed over the years that any place that there is a kind of a larger Latin influence, audiences are they're just flat out better.
Brazil, especially, right? Brazil, they live
Anywhere
they love
South
music.
America, Central America,
Yeah.
in Europe, where you have like in Spain,
Yeah.
Italy, it's like they go nuts, and it's like you're reminded that, oh wow, people still are really deeply emotionally, viscerally affected by music.
Definitely.
And that's not to say though that a more attentive and mellow audience isn't also awesome. So Kabu for us was the first show back in the States. And
Oh, wow, okay.
it was shocking.
How did you feel about that show for you guys?
It was
Did you-
fun. We
Yeah,
had
it
a
was
great
fun.
time. The audience was beautiful and wonderful, and definitely the most aromatic audience that we've been in front of in a long time.
Aromatic meaning they smelled good?
They smelled like super expensive marijuana.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense.
They had the stinkiest, dankiest, danky dank.
Well, it is in La Jolla. It's one of the most beautiful settings of almost
And they
any
can
show.
afford like the
Yeah.
stinky danky dank. Anyway,
Yeah.
but yeah, so it was at first when we came on stage, it was one of those more attentive, mellow audiences. There's like 20 or 30,000 of them, but they were like paying attention. And so it's a little jarring at first when you're coming from a place where in all over Europe and all over South America, Central America, they're so into it that they're singing every word, like every person in the audience. It'd
Yeah.
be like 20,000 people deep singing at the top of their lungs. And when I stop singing, they start singing the guitar riff.
Which is crazy. I can't even imagine that.
So it's like
That's
a
crazy.
wild,
Yeah.
like football game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's different.
So America, step up your game. That's actually what you need to do. But at what point, because I kind of want to go back to the DJ thing. I find it so interesting that you guys were one of the first bands to use a DJ. And even now when I was watching you guys, I was like, wow, it's still so unique, like to have a guy scratching, right? Because you don't really hear it in rock bands that much. So when were you like, we should be adding a DJ to our music because it's going to add an element of something that we obviously was that from a hip hop perspective where you were like,
Yeah.
I like what's going on in culture, and I think we need to try and add a little bit of that because your music has this, it definitely has all kinds of genres mixed into one. And you said it best, but going back to your statement, you like, how did that evolve? How are you? I don't remember what record you guys added the DJ. Was that from the beginning or was that?
It was early on. Yeah,
Okay.
it was. We were experimenting with it before we did our first major label full length, just called Science. That came out in 1997. So I think it was around 95 that we brought on a turntablist, and we didn't know how it was going to work. We just liked the idea that there was an instrument on stage that was non-traditional that we could utilize samples.
Right.
And we could sample ourselves. We could sample songs we loved. And what we ended up doing and how it's evolved is there are very few samples that have been borrowed from any place else. We actually create all of, it's most, if not all, of the content that you hear that's coming from the turntables. It's either my voice stacked, it's guitar sounds, it's organ sounds. And DJ Kilmore, Chris, he also plays a Hammond B3, he plays a Wurlitzer, he plays a Fender Rhodes all hooked into guitar pedals. He used to play like a theremin. Do you know what that is?
Yeah, of course. It's a very strange instrument that you like wave your hands over to make these weird eerie sounds.
Your
energy or something.
Your
right?
electromagnetic field, and it's like an antenna that's attached to a box, and then you control the volume on one side based on how close you are to it, and then the pitch of the tone on how close you are to the antenna.
Which would be interesting. Was there ever a hit song in the history of music that used a theremin? I would say no.
Yes.
Ooh.
Beach Boys.
Oh, okay. Well, of course it was. It was like Pet Sounds or something.
It was on Pet
right?
Sounds, yeah.
Of course. It's the weirdest, strangest, most progressive record ever at the time.
Right.
So, and I'm jumping a little bit, but like obviously one of the songs that really resonated with everyone in the world, I think, is Drive. Mm-hmm. And is there a story behind that? Because it's like one of the best sing along songs ever. Like you're like, how did that come about? Were you literally sitting in your car and you're like, I just came up with it or something? Like how did that happen?
Sort of like a lot of the songs that we've written over the years. Very rarely does it have a kind of a straight and linear path. You know, sometimes Michael, our guitar player, he's like my songwriting partner in the band, and he basically hands me unfinished riffs, different musical small pieces that he thinks I would enjoy, and I do the same back with him. With sometimes they're like disembodied lyrics or melodies or phrases and things like that. And we basically just have this rapport where it's like a creative game of telephone, where I send a message to him and then he responds to it and sends it back, and vice versa.
Now you can do that without even being in the same country. It's crazy.
I know, right?
Yeah.
We used to record stuff onto like a tape.
Yeah.
And I would take it over to him and play it for him, and then he would jump on it and put things on it, and that's how songs would happen. So he had written the initial guitar riff to what became the riff in Drive, and I think that he had initially written it for a friend's like independent movie score, which is a piece of something.
And then you just put lyrics to it, and that.
Well, he played it for me in the car, and I'm like, "What is this?" And he's like, "Oh, it's something I wrote for, I forget who it was, but they needed a small piece of music for a film, if I'm not mistaken." And then I said, "I want this. Let me climb on this." So whenever we're referring to each other's stuff, we like to think of it as like
a tree.
Like a tree or a jungle gym, and we always say like, "Let me climb on that. Let me climb on that."
And of course, I took pictures of you in a tree, so it's very appropriate.
Yes.
I did photograph you in a tree.
Right. Honestly, it's an apt metaphor for the creative process, because I've never experienced anything in the creative process, and I'd be hard pressed to find anyone that has been, who is the one that originally planted the seed of the tree. We're all climbing on someone else's tree.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's one of the things that's so fascinating about it, is that eventually you can't find the bottom of the tree.
Yeah.
You're just climbing on other people's creations, and eventually you start to climb into novel territory, and it feels like you've reinvented the tree.
So this tree of Drive started with Michael, and then.
But I digress.
We're digressing about trees. We can talk about trees for a long time. But the tree of Drive started with him doing this piece of music for the soundtrack. You took it, and then did you know right away? Because sometimes you write a song, I guess, and you're like, you know what, I kind of feel like this could be a hit. Or did you feel like, you know what, I'm not sure how people would take to it?
I've always been bad at identifying what would be a quote unquote hit.
Yeah.
I've never been good at that. I like to just write, and then let other people who are perhaps more qualified decide, because I would choose really obscure things.
Like, what would be one of your favorites that maybe the world didn't agree with as much as you did?
It's a really good question. There are many. Like, there's a song. We've put out 8 full-length records and a handful of EPs, and there's a lot of Incubus material out there. But on a record, I think it was called "A Crow Left of the Murder," there's a song, came out in 2003 or 2004. There's a song called "Here in My Room," which is this really kind of like romantic, psychedelic, kind of erotic piece of music. Like, it's really slow. It's a beautiful piano thing, but it has these really dark, beautiful undertones. And I always loved the song. I love performing it live, but it would never have been anybody else's pick. I would have chosen that one. To me, like radio would sound very different if it were up to me. If I were king for a day,
it would all be trees and strange.
Yeah, people would be getting lost in the woods all the time.
So I want to play Drive. You're listening to Lips LA Radio. I want to hold this thought because I do want to come back and talk about, at some point, People Magazine, Jess, you know, that Brandon definitely...
Oh, yeah, the hottest guys in music.
What?
This is years ago. You were voted one of the hottest guys in music, and I want to know how you felt like being, you know, this sort of personification of who you are, because, you know, it's a whole thing with you guys. You have a great vibe, and I think the vibe is a part of your music and who you are. And so hold that thought. Let's play Drive, and you heard the story behind it, and here it is. Incubus. Hey, we're back. You listen to Lips LA Radio live from the Dream Hotel. We're with singer, songwriter, author, artist, and all-around great human being, Brandon Boyd from Incubus. And Jessica, what's going on, guys? We have another caller here. So the last call was an interesting call. So let's take this call. I think Igby's on the line here. Igby, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Cool. Well, you're here with Brandon. So yeah, ask away, bro.
Hi, how you doing? Awesome.
Nice to meet you, Igby.
I'm a long-time fan.
Thanks, man.
What's your question for Brandon?
My question for Brandon was if he had a favorite Incubus song.
Ooh,
Do you have a favorite Incubus song?
That's a tough one. It's a little bit like you have 120 or so children, and then someone asks you, "Who's the favorite?"
You gotta have one that you every night when you play though.
Since we're in private, I'll tell you.
Yes.
If this were public, I wouldn't be able to say. But the truth is, Igby it kind of changes. Usually changes every couple of weeks, but it's like kind of mood dependent. I've never had one favorite song from any artist for like my entire life. Have you ever had one song that's like permeated through your experience that like this will always be my favorite song of any artist?
I definitely have favorite artists like Zeppelin and things like. I don't know. A favorite song, Ramble On is one of them.
No, it does. You're right. It changes. It goes based off mood or
setting,
however many times you heard it.
Exactly.
That day.
Yeah. So
I actually have one.
You do. What's yours?
Yeah, from Robin. Show Me Love, all-time favorite. From her.
Nice.
So I'm wrong. So sometimes people do, and that's amazing. I've always been one of those people that can't decide. So right now, my favorite Incubus song.
No, I cycle through.
Oh, right. Okay.
I know what you mean. So what was your favorite?
Right now, my favorite Incubus song is one that I started working on last night that isn't actually an Incubus song yet, but I listened to it like 14 times after I demoed it in my basement, and it's my favorite. And it doesn't have a title, and you can't hear it because it doesn't really
At some point, we'll get to hear it. So
I'll get back to you.
Igby, the answer to the question is it has no title, but you'll hear it soon on either Brandon's solo record or an Incubus record.
Untitled.
Or the soundtrack to The Trees or something.
Right.
Thanks for calling in, Igby. We're going to jump back into it, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Thank you, guys.
So cool. So I want to go back to what before we listened to Drive a minute ago. So People Magazine, right? Jess, People Magazine a while ago, like Brandon,
yes,
I don't even
you got
remember
the
this.
moniker from Teen People. You were one of the hottest guys in music. I mean, how did that make you feel?
I wonder if I was a teenager when that happened.
I think it was just People Magazine.
Or if I was an adult and Teen People was saying it, that's creepy.
I think it was more just. I think it was People Magazine in general. Okay. So.
How does that? What did you say? How does that make me feel?
Yeah, how does it make you feel? Do we know? I mean, that you're just so wanted and like, the world you're just so sexy to everybody.
It kind of makes me laugh. I think I don't know if that's just my nervous reaction to compliments, but it's a nice compliment, I suppose.
Just keep taking your shirt off for us.
Yeah. You're still shirtless when I see you play, so I guess that's all good.
It gets hot.
Yeah.
And it's nice to be able to just shed layers when it gets hot.
Totally. Well, listen.
And it sucks when you can't, right?
Of course. Yeah. I think we're just going to keep the temperature blasted high at all venues.
Let's not forget that he also has the nicknames of like the Invisible Floating Torso Man, Happy Nappy, Brandon of the Jungle, Cornelius. I don't even know where all these names come from.
Brandon of the Jungle.
Where do any of these names come from?
Right.
And who gave you those names?
Like
your bandmates or
something?
something?
Tree? Like a climbing tree? Like a favorite climbing tree?
That's an amazing question. There was a tree that I used to love to climb with my brothers when I would be down in San Diego visiting my grandparents when I was a child, and it was a massive magnolia in Balboa Park.
Because my favorite trees to climb are magnolias. They have the best branches.
Yeah, it was amazing. We used to hide in the roots, and it was incredible. Right here. Come on.
Oh, yeah, found it. All right.
But my favorite tree, I love that we're talking about this, and it's probably not going to make the actual cut, but I have a...
We only have an hour.
I have a love affair with oak trees because I grew up in the Santa Monica Mountains. And so my brothers and I grew up just being surrounded by oak trees and sage. And
Ooh.
Yeah.
So it smelled really good?
it does,
Is it
yeah.
very messy, though?
No, not messy. It's fun.
So let's jumping back into music, right? Because we can digress forever, I think, with Brandon. But so because at some point, all right, you got the hits. You're doing music. You guys have been on their own for a long time, and then also you personally have been getting into all kinds of stuff the last few years, right? So we have the art. You wrote a few books.
Mm-hmm.
You've had a couple art shows recently. I even remember a while ago you were designing a jewelry line. So like,
right.
which of those things kind of like inspire you the most? I know the art is something very near and dear to you. Actually, Brandon made me this amazing thing just for my birthday. He made me this amazing skateboard with, I believe, actually a model that we work with, Nicole, might be on the skateboard that he actually painted or drew. And I've been to your art studio. I took pictures of you there, and it was great. You have this amazing art studio. So is there something in there that sort of like inspires you more than another? Obviously, I know they're all inspiring because when you're artistic, I get that music, art, designing. But I know that really you've been focusing a lot on the art. You've had a few shows lately, which has been really cool for you. So you have a show coming up, or you have a couple of shows you just did, right? Let's talk a little bit about your art. 'Cause I don't know, not everyone may know what a great artist you are. And if they don't know, then you should check out Brandon's work online.
Yeah, check it out. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, of course.
It's been one of those things, my experience with art, and as far as like a visual medium of art, definitely predates my experience in music. But today, and for the past 2 decades, it's informed music as much as the music has informed the art for me. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grow up, when I was a kid. You know that term, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I could never land on an exact thing. I just knew that I wanted to be an artist. I didn't even really know what that meant. And I think now, in my middle age, I've come to understand that it meant I had permission to wander creatively, to be part of a process that was sort of bigger than me. I could kind of like dip my toe into a raging torrent and see what that was like, you know, to go wandering through a dark, scary forest and then come back and have stories to tell, that type of a thing. So essentially what I've been doing this entire time is creating environments around me, but also around my loved ones and the places that I go, environments that are conducive to inviting in a larger creative process. That's what is important to me. And I think some of the most profound experiences that I've ever had have been ones where I've given myself permission and given people around me, or they've given themselves permission to explore and to be curious, infinitely curious, and to not know why you were doing it or where you would end up, but more so that you just were doing it and something wonderful would happen. So I feel honestly very blessed and very fortunate to be able to do what I do, because I truly love it to my very core.
Because your art is a little abstract, but you also sometimes use subjects, right? And so sometimes it's a reference of, models or whoever else that you happen to be drawing or painting. So it's drawing and painting, I guess. You do a combination, right? You do. Yeah,
I grew up drawing.
Yeah.
I grew up, my mom is an artist and was also a singer and a dancer, and my dad was an actor in his day and also an engineer. So
it's an entertainment family.
Kind of, but it wasn't like one of those stage mom type of situations.
Yeah.
They merely provided the atmosphere that would make it feel like we had permission. We gave ourselves permission to express ourselves. And so it came out in lots of different ways, which is probably why I've never really hunkered down on solely one creative pursuit. Is that I grew up in an atmosphere where it's like, today I'm going to draw, tomorrow I'm going to sing, the next day I'm going to bang on the piano, then I'm going to write a book. And I would write little stories and stuff like that growing up. So if I ever have kids one day, I hope to provide a similar environment where they feel safe to just be infinitely curious.
Well, I think all the output you're doing creatively has been really great. So, I mean, as I said, I don't mean to give you a ton of compliments, but the art is great too. So
thank you so much.
That's really, really nice. And
you were going to say, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, you're so good with your words. I mean, I was looking up some of the quotes by Brandon Boyd.
You're mesmerized, right?
And
You look mesmerized.
I
Jess.
mean,
I
I'm
think you're
telling
speechless.
you.
It's very rare that Jess is
Don't make me
speechless.
blush. No, but it's true. And I just wanted to know, who do you pull from? Who inspires you? Is it a composer who's just good with their words, who you've read their letters, or a poet? Or I mean, where do you draw from?
I definitely pull from a pretty wide range. I've actually found over the years that the authors that have inspired me, the writers, like novelists, people, you know, I admired in literature, were as influential to music as anything. There are bands that were influential, and there are artists who are continually inspiring to me, but I draw, honestly, most of my inspiration from people who have a preternatural disposition towards wordsmithing. Is that a word?
Wordsmithing?
Yeah.
You just made it a word.
I just
I
made it
like
a word,
That's-
yeah. So it was people like, I grew up loving Henry Miller, and
Nice.
I loved reading his correspondences with Anais Nin.
So if we wanted
it's all over the place. Those are just two. There's, you know, probably countless people.
You said something, I believe it was, we should all learn to love ourselves before it's made illegal.
That's a lyric from a song called Warning, yeah.
what does that mean exactly?
What does that mean?
I suppose I was reacting to something. Just to preface what I'm about to say with one thing, I rarely know what I'm writing about while I'm writing it. That's part of that whole idea of giving yourself permission to wander. For me, art and creativity have always been kind of like a spilling. Like you let the paint can spill over, and then you organize it into a painting after the fact. So the kind of analytical, scientific part comes last. The fun part for me is the spilling. Mm-hmm. And it's a little bit like finding pictures in clouds or pictures in chaos. You know, you stare into the clouds and it's like, look, a bear. Maybe not everybody would see a bear, but I did. That's my bear now. So that with Warning, with that song in particular, I was probably reacting to the news of the day. Culture has always been a big source of not only frustration, but inspiration to me. And I think that one thing kind of leads to the other. Sometimes it's dire frustration, especially with the direction that your culture might be heading, can be inspiring to want to say something in a loving protest or a peaceful protest. So I think that's probably what that was.
And I want to talk about culture today and music today, and where we've gone in our culture from making new music, and if bands still actually should be creating new music if people care as much, and where it's gone in hip hop and pop and rock and where we're at. So I want to actually play Pardon Me, one of my favorite Incubus songs.
Yeah.
And we'll be back in 2 seconds and catch up with Brandon Boyd, Incubus, Jessica Michel, live from the Dream Hotel, Hollywood. You're listening to Lips LA Radio. Awesome. You just heard Pardon Me by Incubus, Brandon Boyd. So Brandon, there's so much coming up in your life. I want to kind of wrap it up by telling, just in terms of culture and where we're at right now, like, do you think making new music is as important as it used to be? How do you guys feel about making new music? Do you like it? Do you think you have to? Are you cool with obviously, I know you're always trying to inspire, and as we can tell from the conversation, it's all about being inspired by you. So how do you feel about it? Where has it gone? I mean, music has taken such a different turn right now that, I mean, do bands need to make music anymore, or is it okay just to rest on like their catalog? And how do you think the public really, you know, is in demand for it in certain bands, or what do you think?
Right. I mean, there's not the demand for a rock band's new music as there once was. And also, you know, because Incubus we've been a band for the better part of 30 years.
Wow.
And so the longer a band is around, the more people are just instinctually going to lean towards the nostalgic elements of your band. But I feel like we're in a really particular place in our lives, but also in our creative life, where we're not a new band by any stretch of the term, but we're also not old yet. We're not young anymore, but we're not old either. We're kind of in this sweet spot, which is, it's kind of an amazing thing to be 42 and have a lot of, you know, piss and vinegar still in you, because we have a lot of music to write, and there's a lot to say.
So 2018, 2019, we got art coming up from Brandon.
Lots of art.
We got music.
We're writing music. We're
More
probably
touring.
going to skirt the idea of a traditional album. We're probably just going to release songs as they're finished.
By the way, I think that's better because I don't think it doesn't even matter these days. We
No.
work with some artists that have gotten incredibly famous without even releasing full-length records yet. So
Right.
it's all changed, right? But
Yeah, which is fine. It's just different.
But the slate for 2019 looks just get it because I want everyone to know exactly what's going on with you. So 2019 looks like what? Because we're almost at the end of 2018. Scary, right?
Yeah, it's insane. If we're still here as a civilization on the planet in
You mean
2019,
if we don't blow up,
we don't blow ourselves up
self-combust?
or die of political hopelessness, we will be on tour. We're going to be on tour probably from, I would say, spring of 2019 on.
Cool.
Yeah.
And art-wise, anything coming up? Because you just had a show in Texas, so you have any other shows coming up?
I did. I had a show in Texas, and believe it or not, it was in December. It'll be a year ago in LA, my Optimistic pop-up gallery. I'm working on my 4th book.
Amazing.
And I have a bunch of cool, weird, neato projects that are going to be coming out around Christmas, art things that people can check out really soon.
Yeah, because you did a record with Skrillex, right? Is that correct?
Our newest record, 8,
Right.
Skrillex, he mixed it and he actually produced a couple of the songs on it. People should check it out. It's the newest Incubus record. It's called 8. It came out in April of last year, and we've actually been on tour the whole time.
All right, so we're going to give a lot of plugs. Follow Brandon to check out his art, right? And check out your website to check out the art. So just what's the website for the art? People want to see
The
art?
website is brandonboyd.me. I
Okay.
try to think of the most selfish website I could think of. And then just my Instagram is just Brandon Boyd.
Right. And Jessica Michel, everyone knows her
Yes,
Instagram.
thank you for coming on today, by the way. You were
Yeah.
lovely.
Yeah,
Thanks.
we love you, bro. And
guys are
follow
so
everyone
sweet.
along. Yeah, so, and thank you, Brandon Boyd, Incubus, Jessica. It's been great. I don't think we left anything out, but thanks, Brandon, for coming on.
Thank you,
Appreciate
guys.
it.